Right, let's go back to the issue of net zero if I can, and forget the politics. Let's cut through some of the spin we heard today and get into the nuts and bolts of what was announced today. Of course, again, we didn't see any modelling. There was a glossy document which tells me that that's been at the printers perhaps before they got the National Party over the line, knowing what I know about government, but we'll see. What's this all mean for businesses and families around Australia? Well, who better than a former Resources Minister, former Productivity Commission Executive, and obviously National Party Senator, well known to you, Matt Canavan, who joins me now. OK, Matt, I want to get into some detail here. I think it's incredibly important. People are hungry to understand it. I listened really carefully to the Prime Minister. $20 billion, that's equivalent of 20 major hospitals, will be spent in the next 8 years for a whole lot of low emissions technologies. That just gets us to 2030. Obviously, there's massive expenditure beyond 2030. Is this a good use of taxpayers' money? And how can we commit on a technology roadmap where we haven't even got those technologies invented yet?
Well, there's a bit to unpack there, Peter, but it's pretty clear here that the plan announced today is reliant on lots of things that we don't have now. Now, is the $20 billion a good investment? Well, look, I do think we should invest in technologies. I have nothing against us researching hydrogen, batteries, all of these things. In fact, as the Resources Minister, I oversaw the first national hydrogen strategy a few years ago. What I don't think is smart, though, is to gamble our future and especially to gamble people's livelihoods on unproven things. There is no use of hydrogen for electricity at scale in the world. Today. There's very little use of it and very boutique petrochemical activities. So we really are hoping here, praying that this will pay off. Now, $20 billion is probably not enough. I mean, it's funnily enough, to invent all of these new technologies, it's going to have to we're going to have to win the lotto here. And our worry here is we're taking on a mortgage with the plan that will win the lotto to pay it back. Because a lot of people have tried to invent hydrogen technologies in the last 100 years. The old saying is, hydrogen is always 20 years away. You know, it's always 20 years away. So I think, you know, we're going to be a little bit worried here about where we go if we don't adopt these technologies. And that's where I think the bureaucrats and the judiciary in this country will get an inch, they'll run a mile, and before you know it, we're actually stopping things from happening rather than using the carrot approach that we're trying to announce today.
Your mortgage analogy is right. I mean, I think it's perhaps even worse than that because it's not just an economic risk we're taking here, you know, the jobs and Australia's wealth, but it's also, I think, particularly at this time, a national security risk given where we are with China. We're also told today, you know, on top of 2050, that emissions from the electricity sector will reduce by up to 97% on 2005 levels. Now, that's an extraordinary drop. Where's the baseload power for Australia to be secure and to run an economy going to come from?
Well, nuclear could do it. Nuclear could do it. But
your boss has taken it off the table.
The issue here is that no energy system has ever been dominated by one form of energy. There is still a significant use of biomass today, straw and wood and sometimes some worse things used burnt to create power around in the developing world. That still happens hundreds of years past the Industrial Revolution. There's a point that Vaclav Smil, the renowned energy economist and analyst, made last week at a net zero love fest. He shocked the crowd apparently by saying, look, it takes a long time to change energy types and 30 years is not a very long time. So these numbers, you know, projecting things over 30 years, Peter, I don't think you can put much weight in that. I do welcome, though, the Prime Minister has not ruled out the coal-fired power station at Collinsville. 129 coal-fired power stations are being built right now in countries that have committed to net zero. So there's nothing inconsistent with us investing in baseload power today, in coal-fired power, in the cleaner types that reduce emissions, in gas-fired power, as well, we're still having a goal in 30 years' time of reaching net zero, because what we should do right now, of course, is make sure we have reliable power before we worry about what's going to happen in 30 years' time.
Yeah, you're a former minister, Matt Canavan. You're not naive. I mean, he's holding out that coal-fired power station for you in North Queensland because it was a commitment made at the last election that it hasn't really progressed at all, a bit like dams promised by the National Party 8 years ago now. when you and I were working to get out of opposition into government. They haven't materialised much either. How much faith do you have that this is just window dressing to keep you on side and hopefully so a few Conservatives in Queensland can hold their nose and still vote Liberal?
Well, look, the proof's in the pudding, obviously, with all of these things. There's nothing I can say here to assuage people's concerns, because talk is cheap, of course. But yeah, I stand on my record of fighting for these things, fighting for Adani, fighting for that Collinsville coal-fired power station, fighting to get the Rookwood Weir built as well. That's one of the dams we are building, and so. That's why I would still encourage people, despite my disappointment this week and some people's disappointment, that vote for the Liberal National Party where people are in the government room. Like myself, I need more people to help me out. I could have used with a few Corey Bernardis and Craig Kellys this week, but they're no longer there. So we've got to get more in the government party room, because that's where this has been decided this week. It wasn't decided in the Senate or the House of Reps. It was decided in the government party room. So I do agree with the Prime Minister that if we go down this path, it's best to be done under an LNP government where you've got people like me who are not puppets. There's no strings attached here, Peter. I make my own mind up and I'm not afraid to speak it. And that's the best way to provide scrutiny for those people who are a little bit concerned about where the government is headed.
Lipstick on a pig is still a pig. Matt Canavan, got to leave it there. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Peter. Cheers.